Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. I hope you guys are having a great afternoon. Let's talk Tucker, okay? You know, Tucker Carlson. I remember during the run-up to these regime change wars and the war on terror, I had a real big disdain for the Tuck, okay? He was on MSNBC. He wore the bow tie. He was very snooty. He was a disciple of William Crystal, okay? And like very close. I mean, I pretty much came at it from a very, very neocon perspective. And over the years, that has changed. And to the point where he is not only the most sensible person on mainstream television right now. By the way, don't agree with him all the time still. I still think there are big problems with Tucker, but I think he has repented for a lot of those sins. In fact, his debate with Cenk Uygur was amazing. He handled himself fantastically. He made very, very great points, and he was spot on in most cases. So moving on from that, today I watched a clip where he really broke down what he thinks the majority of people would vote for and crossed partisan lines in a way that everybody needs to do. Ain't about left or right. It is about right and wrong. Do you understand? Let's bring it in. That's the truth of the matter. Okay? So, let's go over here and talk a little more Tuck. So there were times, again, talking about the Iraq war, really talking about the war on terror in general, 9/11, belittling people that question that Tucker and I, we didn't get along. But obviously you've seen him do his rounds in quote-unquote the big alt media and kind of, talk a little bit more sense. And it's sad that Fox News is the home of Tucker Carlson, as though that gives them a lot more credibility. But just the fact that they didn't go along with the Russiagate hoax also gives them a lot more credibility. The other side of that story is that both sides are so pro-war, no one's talking about the OPCW report. Nobody's talking about any of the real issues that could get us out of these regime change wars, and they're going after people like Tulsi Gabbard. So we're going to play this a long clip. It's a long clip, but we're going to play it, and we're going to break it down piece by piece.
What if the Republican leadership here in Washington had bothered to learn the lessons of the 2016 election? What if they'd cared enough to do that? What if they had understood and embraced the economic nationalism that was at the heart of Donald Trump's presidential campaign? What would the world look like now, 2.5 years later? Well, for starters, Republicans in Congress would regularly be saying things like this, quote, "I'm deeply grateful for the opportunities America has given me, but the giant American corporations who control our economy don't seem to feel the same way. They certainly don't act like it. Sure, these companies wave the flag, but they have no loyalty or allegiance to America. Levi's is an iconic American brand, but the company operates only 2% of its factories here. Dixon Ticonderoga, maker of the famous No. 2 pencil, has moved almost all of its pencil production to Mexico and China. And General Electric recently shut down an industrial engine factory in Wisconsin and shipped the jobs to Canada. The list goes on and on. These, quote, American companies show only one real loyalty, to the short-term interests of their shareholders, a third of whom are foreign investors. If they can close up an American factory and ship jobs overseas to save a nickel, that's exactly what they will do, abandoning loyal American workers and hollowing out American cities along the way. Politicians love to say they care about American jobs, but for decades, those same politicians have cited free market principles and refused to intervene in markets on behalf of American workers. And of course, they ignore those same supposed principles and intervene regularly to protect the interests of multinational corporations and international capital. The result? Millions of good jobs lost overseas and a generation of stagnant wages, growing inequality, and sluggish economic growth. If Washington wants to put a stop to this, it can. If we want faster growth, stronger American industry, and more good American jobs, then our government should do what other leading nations do and act aggressively to achieve those goals instead of catering to the financial interests of companies with no particular allegiance to America. The truth is that Washington policies, not unstoppable market forces, are a key driver of the problems American workers face. From our trade agreements to our tax code, we have encouraged companies to invest abroad, ship jobs overseas, and keep wages low, all in the interest of serving multinational companies and international capital with no particular loyalty to the United States. It's becoming easier and easier to shift capital and jobs from one country to another. That's why our government has to care more about defending and creating American jobs than ever before, not less. We can navigate the changes ahead if we embrace economic patriotism and make American workers our highest priority, rather than continuing to cater to the interests of companies and people with no allegiance to America. End quote.
Let's stop. I wanted to stop it there at the end quote. Now, obviously, by the headline, you know who says this. First of all, that was about a almost 3-minute clip, if not more, 3 minutes he did of just the monologue there, basically repeating it word for word. He's a good orator. He's got a way about him to make you understand it. Now, what I really like about this is he's going to say, hey, who wouldn't agree with that? That's obviously common sense. And yes, other nations do that. The idea of foreign investments, corporate welfare, and the bullshit system we're under is sickening. We have to end that system. All right, that is not what our forefathers wanted. Talk about foreign entanglements and then just lobbying in government alone. It should be criminal. We need to get rid of lobbyists. We need to get money out of politics first. Now, he's going to concede that this is Elizabeth Warren. Now, obviously, I've been hugely critical of Elizabeth Warren in the past. You know, Russiagate, many policies I do not agree with. However, there are certain things she's talked about with breaking up monopolies and other issues that I do. Even Ocasio-Cortez, as nutty as some of that stuff sounds, you know, she's right. When she agreed with Ted Cruz recently to get rid of the idea that you can go into Congress and Senate and make all these friends and connections and then get out and then become a lobbyist for one of these companies that you probably had a backdoor deal with in the first place. It's insane. I'm glad that they're trying to take that on, that they could work bipartisanly. Because guess what, guys? It ain't team fucking baseball out there. All right? I'm telling you now. It matters. You need to know that these aren't left or right issues. So here we're going to go into Tucker's breakdown. I'm going to stop it a little bit more and more because that's the quote. But he does a great job. Props to Tucker Carlson.
Now, let's say you regularly vote Republican. Ask yourself, what part of the statement you just heard did you disagree with? Was there a single word that seemed wrong to you? Probably not. Here's the depressing part. Nobody you voted for said that or would ever say it. Republicans in Congress can't promise to protect American industries.
And let me stop. Tucker knows who his audience is mostly, even though, you know, I'm sure he's got a lot more people who are independents watching him than he thinks, or at least that he's alluding to. He looked at his audience. He said, does that sound like someone you wouldn't vote for? And guess what? You'd never vote for the person that said that, ever, if you were in my audience. Because he knows what a hardcore Democrat on some issues Elizabeth Warren is. And again, it's not a Democratic or Republican issue to me. But the audience that he represents, the people that are still watching television in their homes and aren't on their small devices all the time or streaming services, well, he's correct.
They wouldn't dare to do that. It might violate some principle of Austrian economics. It might make the Koch brothers mad. It might alienate the libertarian ideologues who, to this day, fund most Republican campaigns. So no, a Republican did not say that.
Did you hear it? Takes on the Koch brothers in that quote. I mean, slam dunking on people, Tucker. Love it. Absolutely love it. And he's right. You know, I'm a very, first of all, I'm a constitutionalist. I will never label myself as anything but. Why? Because the Constitution at its core was a document that could be changed for the better. And a document we no longer abide by the way. We live in a national security state. They have done away with the three branches of government and constitutional realities that we were all supposed to live under. It's unfortunate. We need to take that back. All right? So he's right when he says that libertarian ideals are funding Republicans. We need to get out of this idea that a two-party system is something that's good. and that somehow we're going to elect a savior with a big S on their chest that's going to be able to fix everything. No, it's going to take a lot of people together to take this leviathan of a system on.
Sadly. Instead, the words you just heard are from, and brace yourself here, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. It's true. Yesterday, Warren released what she called her plan for economic patriotism. Amazingly, that's pretty much what it is, economic patriotism. There's not a word about identity politics in the document. There are no hysterics about gun control or climate change. There's no lecture about the plight of transgender illegal immigrants. It's just pure old-fashioned economics, how to preserve good-paying American jobs. Even more remarkable, many of Warren's policy prescriptions make obvious sense. She says the U.S. government should buy American products when it can. And of course it should. She says we need more workplace apprenticeship programs because four-year college degrees aren't right for everyone.
Aren't right for everyone. Let's stop that. You know, I was watching Rogan's interview with David Pakman, and I've seen some of Pakman's stuff, and he's pretty reasonable. You know, I know that a lot of people will be upset at me on that, but I also like Jimmy Dore a lot. But Pakman, at least you can talk to him. He's not looking to insult everybody. He's got intelligence in his head. But one of the things that bothered me is they were talking about the education system and colleges. Well, that system needs to be decimated as well. All right. They were referring to, I believe, Greg Fitzsimmons, very funny comedian, very open-minded comedian, by the way, out there, that was sending his two kids to school at something like $65,000 a year in just tuition alone, not housing, not food. That's insane. That's insane. And let me tell you why it's insane. Because there's no reason anybody needs a 4-year degree to do what they want anymore. Unless you are going to become a surgeon, or you're literally becoming some kind of a doctorate in something and you need to really study up. Where is it? The magic box. The magic box can answer questions and do things just about any person that has memorization skills can. Think about that. So what do? You learn a craft. When they were just talking about 2-year apprenticeships in schools, that's the model we need to go to. First of all, those last 2 years of your high school, 17 and 18, start directing, at least maybe three things that you choose that you start going towards and maybe you gravitate towards. And then you decide to go to one of these 2-year mentorships or apprenticeships. First of all, bring them into real world experience, number one, and giving them skills where they may not have to pay and it benefits both parties is going to be good. And then you're going to give them a degree. But that's not what the education system wants. The education system wants to indoctrinate you from your very impressionable age of when you're first becoming an adult into your adulthood. And unfortunately, guys, they softened up a lot of people. And they've done almost nothing but make them obsolete in the marketplace because they don't have real world skills. And they're not well adjusted. So let's continue on. I hate to rant and rave. I mean, again, Tucker is knocking it out of the park.
Well, that's true. She says that taxpayers ought to benefit from the research and development that they pay for. And yet, she writes, quote, we often see American companies take that research and use it to manufacture products overseas, like Apple did with the iPhone. The companies get rich, and American taxpayers have subsidized the creation of low-wage foreign jobs, end quote, and so on.
Think about that. All this little magic technology that we all love so much, it is subsidized by corporate welfare. When you find out that the Googles of the world don't pay tax here, the Amazons of the world don't pay tax here, that is not by accident. That is through the finagled dealings they have with the government. And then when you find out a guy like Bezos who pays himself, $80,000 a year? That's the cover story. I get $80,000 a year. Obviously, all his liquid assets and what he owns is, he's a more than billionaire. But then, on top of all those little backdoor deals, I'll make a deal with the what is it? I believe it's the NSA and not the CIA, that I'm going to store their data. Oh, $600 million. Oh, more than a $500 million deal. That's great. We're going to secure their data. You know what? I'm going to buy up the Post too. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy up some media. And then I'm going to invest in other outlets like the Voxes of the world and the BuzzFeeds of the world that can't seem to keep their head above water. That's the system we have now. It is not a constitutional system that is set up for you and me. And that's another reason I'm just going to throw this out there, maybe a little off for some people, that I really don't like race politics. First of all, I'm not a fucking racist, and most people are not. And I feel very, very bad for those that actually not only play into those type of politics, but hate a person because of the color of their skin or their religion or any of that. It makes me want to vomit. Secondly, it is us against them. And it ain't the 1%, it's the 0.0001%. That's who we're talking about here. And they're little minions. All right? It's the people that run the lobbies. There's no reason that we shouldn't benefit from our taxpayer money subsidizing all this stuff. We absolutely should. We could be the strongest nation in the world on so many levels, but that's not what this is about. This is about creating a dependence on globalism and subjugating the vast majority of us to modern day serfdom. Let's continue.
She sounds like Donald Trump at his best. So who is this Elizabeth Warren, you ask? Well, not the race-hustling, gun-grabbing abortion extremist you thought you knew. Well, unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren is still all of those things, too. And that's exactly the problem, not just with Elizabeth Warren, but with American politics.
Let's stop it. And he's right. You know, Warren, those are two of the problems that I did not discuss. But really, he's right. And she's got other problems, too. And I'm sorry, there's a reason that we're supposed to be able to arm ourselves. Look what happens when you don't. And I just feel like most people are really out of touch because either, you know, you live somewhere rural in the middle and you don't understand how the coasts work or the big cities work, or you're in one of these big cities and you really just don't understand day-to-day life. And they've opposed us up against each other. And these two political ideologies that don't make any sense, that most people really don't want to abide by.
In Washington, almost nobody speaks for the majority of voters. You're either a libertarian zealot controlled by the banks, yammering on about entrepreneurship and how we need to cut entitlements. That's one side of the aisle. Or worse, you're some decadent trust fund socialist who wants to ban passenger cars and give Medicaid to illegal aliens. That's the other side. What there isn't is a caucus that represents where most Americans actually are. Nationalist on economics, fairly traditional on the social issues. Imagine a politician who wanted to make your health care cheaper but wasn't ghoulishly excited about partial birth abortion. Imagine someone who genuinely respected the nuclear family and sympathized with the culture of rural America, but at the same time was willing to take your side against rapacious credit card companies bleeding you dry at 35% interest. Would you?
First of all, yeah, don't get a credit card. Have the money. Have the money. You know, I get car loans. I get mortgages. I understand why you would do that. But credit card, what? I know I need to build my credit score. I mean, I guess if you have it like that and you're not paying the minimum, good for you. But come on. I mean, think about it. Bleed you dry at 35% interest. That's insane. I've never had a credit card in my life.
Vote for someone like that? My gosh, of course you would. Who wouldn't? That candidate would be elected in a landslide every single time.
Well,
Republican leadership.
I'm going to stop it there anyway because his rant, it goes on and it's still pretty damn good. But he says, I think that's where we kind of disagree. Would they be elected in a landslide? Would they? I think the majority of us would want to elect that person. But I think the propaganda campaign against them, the closest we ever had to that was really Ron Paul. And Rand does a pretty damn good job of bringing out a lot of things. He has his problems, but overall right now, he's one of the very few politicians I can look to and say, all right, that's a great point. Thank you for saying that in public. And he does so on a regular basis. So look, Tucker, I'm glad that you've progressed. It shows that people can change. I think that he is doing a great job. I think that he was spot on in that. And we need to support more of that. You know, again, we don't have a lot of mainstream options. We know what's going on with YouTube. I mean, it's on. It's on. I mean, Dan Dix, who I've known now for well over a decade, probably closer to 15 years. He is not an extremist. He's not a bigot. He doesn't put out hateful content, and his entire channel was demonetized. I'm worried about, obviously, We Are Change and News for a Change in this channel. It's very tough out there. We're going to find other platforms, but at the same time, it's going to be tougher and tougher for people to see. So, you know, we're doubling down where we can. BitChute is the other place I'm going to try to upload these things, but it's so hard to even put them out, and then I've got to go out and download them and upload them. It's a process, folks. So, Guys, if you're not subscribed, now's the time to do so. Join the Burmis Brigade. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you on the flip side.